Hello and welcome to Real Watchers Movie Club. My name is Garrett.
And I'm Kevin.
And we are your hosts. Movie Club is a show where we pick a movie and discuss it every week, just like a book club. On today's show, we're covering the sci-fi drama Blade Runner. Our thoughts and more coming up on Movie Club. Released in 1982, Blade Runner was directed by Ridley Scott and stars Harrison Ford, Rutger Hauer, and Sean Young. In the smog-choked dystopian Los Angeles of 2019, Blade Runner Rick Deckard is called out of retirement to terminate a quartet of replicants who have escaped to Earth seeking their creator for a way to extend their short lifespans. It is currently ranked 184 on IMDb's Top 250 and has a 4.1 out of 5 on Letterboxd. The film was nominated for 2 Academy Awards, one for Best Art Direction and the other for Best Visual Effects. Before we dive into our thoughts, opinions, criticisms, and all that wonderful stuff, we do want to issue a spoiler warning for the film. We are going to be talking about everything that happens in this movie. So if you haven't seen the film, go and watch it first. You can pause us. It's okay. Come back. We're not stuck in the computer. It's not going to hurt us. And then come back and hear what we have to say. But do stay tuned to the end of the show to find out what movie we're covering next week. Because it's sure to be a great video and cannot wait to talk about it. Alrighty, Kevin, so Blade Runner was your pick this week. Yep. So what made you pick it?
Well, the new one not just came out, but came out a little bit ago, and it looked very interesting. I like the steampunk thing about it, and I heard...
Cyberpunk, you mean?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say steampunk? I meant cyberpunk. Yeah,
it's cyberpunk.
All good. Like... futuristic sci-fi movie that looks really cool, and I heard Harrison Ford is in it. He's probably maybe one of my top actors that I enjoy watching, and so I just decided to pick it because it looked cool as well.
Yes, definitely. It's one of those movies that is known for looking cool. It's kind of its whole entire personality, kind of from what I had gathered. But yeah, like you, I had actually never seen this movie. I own it, but had never seen it until we had to watch it for this video. It's one of those movies that I knew I was going to like it because I love sci-fi. Cyberpunk is one of my favorite genres of sci-fi kind of aesthetic anywhere. Even though I kind of prefer the world of Cyberpunk 2077 to this one, because I like the whole cybernetic augmentation instead of replicant people. But Blade Runner is still really cool in that regard. But we finally watched it both for the first time. What were your first thoughts after finishing the film?
First, did you want to talk to them about the different movies that we watched?
Sure. Let's go ahead. We should probably discuss that.
That might be a different thing in here.
So there are several versions of this film. There is a whole wiki on the Blade Runner versions of the film and why they exist. Initially, because neither of us had seen the film before, most Blade Runner fans say that you should watch the theatrical cut first and then watch the final cut, because it's kind of like seeing the baseline, and then the final cut is the best possible version of the film. So I watched the theatrical cut because I own it on Blu-ray, but Kevin was not able to find the theatrical cut because I found out kind of after the fact that it's not really available to stream anywhere. So you watched the final cut and I watched the theatrical cut. So there will be a couple of differences in what we say about the movie. There is a particular thing that I'm kind of critical of in the theatrical cut that Kevin didn't even get to experience.
Yeah, I didn't even know was a thing. So
exactly. And so it's going to make it a little bit more interesting to talk about. So you do want to push that expectation out first, that we did watch different versions of the film. But that being said, first thoughts, Kevin. What did you think when we finished it?
This movie looks damn pretty for 1982. And I was very enthralled with maybe not so much the story, but everything that's happening going on in the background and how it was shot and how big the planet seems, or even the city that they're in. Yeah. But you're only in a couple of spots in this whole city, which I think is really, really cool, and made the city a lot more bigger than what you actually got. And how they made Blade Runner 2049. 2049, maybe hopefully when I watch it, it'll expand on that world a little bit more. And that's what I got from this was what else is in this world that I didn't see.
Yeah, and it's kind of fitting that like Blade Runner is by one of the better sci-fi directors of all time, Ridley Scott. Obviously gave us Alien, but also The Martian, and and then his sequel is done by probably the current best sci-fi person, Denis Villeneuve, who did Dune and Dune Part 2. So like, it's kind of fitting that those people were able to do those movies and bring it to the genre. But yeah, I think I'm in a similar boat to you, where I think that this movie is gorgeous for 1982. It is absolutely gorgeous. The design of everything, the grunginess of everything. It's kind of like how people like when like Star Wars Rogue One went to more that grungy, dirty side of Star Wars. It's really that kind of mentality where like the dirtier the better. Like it feels lived. Everything feels like it has a purpose, and it feels dirty and alive and grounded. It's really well done.
Piggyback on you as well. So like how the Dark Knight was, but then we got the Batman like 2 years ago or last year.
Yeah,
like the Dark Knight is a dark movie, but the Robert Pattinson Batman is like gritty and dark. It was like down to the ground, like you were scraping mud on you while you're watching the movie, and that's what it felt too. And I don't know, I guess that's what I like, because it feels so kind of realistic to me.
Yes.
It's not so high up in the clouds and everything is perfect. It's more, this is what it's gonna be like. Hopefully not in the near future, but some places look like this, and that's what I like about it, because it could be very realistic.
It feels like a possible future of 1982.
Yeah.
And that's what's really kind of cool about it. Just in the same way that Cyberpunk 2077 feels like a future version of today. Like it's perfectly done in that kind of aesthetic regard. And that lived in sci-fi world where everything has a purpose, everything's just grungy and dirty, is not too oftenly seen. And like I said, it is grounded. It feels like a real world. But then every time every once in a while you get a twinge of like the
Future.
far out. You get like the flying cars, you get the giant monolith buildings. Like those are there. And I think for me, the world and the people that inhabit it are very strong here, but also, at least with the version I watched, and I'm maybe for yours as well, it feels like a futuristic film noir detective movie, which
Totally got it.
Is like awesome. Like the movie we're talking about next week is a movie about a classic time period done in modern day, and so in this regard, it's a classic time period done in the future. And so it's kind of similar where you're seeing these attitudes and kind of activities of like the 50s and the 40s, but done in this futuristic environment. And it's really special. And the way that it's done is really beautifully done. But that does lead into one of my critiques, but I didn't know if you had something you wanted to add on top of that.
What was your critique? Maybe we'll talk about like the actors and actresses after that, because that was my next thing.
Sure. So one of my biggest critiques for the movie is due to the theatrical cut, and so this is the thing that Kevin didn't get to experience.
I'll piggyback off of that. So
sure. So the theatrical cut of the movie, there's a big part of it that a lot of people don't like, and is that Harrison Ford's character Rick Deckard does narration in the movie. He's explaining things that go on in the background. He's kind of like any kind of potential mystique or mystery to the movie is immediately thrown out the window because Harrison Ford is explaining what something is or what he's going through his mind or whatever. It's not letting the performance speak, and that kind of takes me out of the film. And so like, getting explanation instead of having to figure it out for ourselves through visual or audio hints or whatever kind of ruins the experience just a little bit. I'm not saying it doesn't make it a terrible film by any means, but it just kind of takes you out of what it could be. But it's odd, right? Because that's something that film noir does, and the best film noir films have that narration in it to kind of go over more character motivation and stuff. But I feel like it's done better in those films because as it exists in the theatrical cut was inputted by Fox because they thought that audiences may have been too dumb to understand what was going on. And so that's when you need to be careful with it.
Doesn't that feel like more like a noir movie then with that narration? Because in my final cut, I didn't have that narration. I was trying to figure things out in the background. So maybe I would have liked that better because what I after watching it, I was like, "Oh, this is a cool sci-fi action movie." But when you're talking about it, it's a sci-fi action noir movie, which I
Mm-hmm.
didn't get that noir part. So maybe that will make or break for some people. Like maybe I will go watch the theatrical cut because I want to see what did I miss if I missed anything.
I think it'll be really funny that, you know, you could potentially see a first here on Movie Club, which is where we'll both watch the opposite version and both our scores will go up for different reasons. I mean, yes, it does make it feel more like a detective noir film, like
Mhm.
absolutely 100%. But I think the content of it is what is the concern more so than the existence of it itself.
Okay.
If the narration was written better and was more inflective, like the typical noir, like she had a way of speaking that I just couldn't get out of my head. Like instead of like, like this isn't said in the movie, but like this is a flying car. I have to push this pedal to make it go up. Like it's kind of that's what it feels like, as opposed to like a classic noir
So
narration.
it was giving you too much information.
I would argue so, and I think that could be a personal thing, but it seems to be other fans too. But like I like a little bit more mystique in my film. I like to try and
Yeah.
figure things out for myself, and so like when I'm spoon fed too many answers or too many things, it does kind of take me out of it.
Yeah, like I can see you saying like if this doesn't happen in the movie, Harrison Ford goes to a person of interest, but he doesn't know he's a person of interest because we saw it in the movie. The narration would be, I walked up to this stranger, and then Harrison Ford just starts talking to the stranger. But in yours, you're saying maybe it's, I talked to the stranger. He looked a little interesting. And I think
Yeah,
that's a little bit too much for a noir movie. It's give you a little bit of context, but don't put something in people's mind.
yeah. Which is why I'm curious to see what you think of it when you watch it. I'll have to let you borrow the disc at some point so you can check it out for
Hmm.
yourself. Um, but yeah, that was the biggest thing for me, and I think that one of my other critiques is about what you were talking about. So let's go ahead and get into the performances here.
Hmm.
So, what stood out to you? What made you want to bring it up?
Um, I don't know. I just really like Harrison Ford as an action character. Like he just feels like I know he's Indiana Jones. He's a lot of other things. He's in The Fugitive, which is kind of like an action drama movie as well.
Yeah,
But he just plays his role so well, and he plays his characters pretty well as well. And being a what it like maybe the narration told you, but what actually is he? Is he a hitman?
so a Blade Runner is like a detective.
Okay.
They're like police officers, but their whole job is to seek out replicants that have come back to Earth because they're not allowed on Earth or they're not permitted to
Mm.
come in or whatever, and they execute them. But
Oh,
they
okay.
call it retiring. They retire them, or I think retire was the word, where
Yeah.
they basically turn them offline. And so, but
Okay.
like
So he's
because replicants are nearly identical to humans, the only way to do it is the Voight Kampf test, which is what
mhm.
he gives to Rachel and to other people as well.
And that was really cool to see how he figures out who is who with that comp test. I maybe a little bit more explored on that because I like the science behind it and everything, but I
Sure,
know that
yeah.
might have gone over some people's heads, so I totally understand. Um, but I don't know. He's such a good action hero to me, and I really liked him in this movie. Now the Rachel character, I don't know. I didn't. She was in this movie a little bit more than I thought, and
Hmm.
she didn't really catch me as like the love interest until everything happened.
Yeah, in a scene in context that's a little, I'm not going to say rapey, but like
it's very hands-on.
very forced. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's not the most well-sitting
Romantic
moment.
way.
Yeah. But I think I'll talk about Harrison Ford first. I actually think he's a little too dry in this movie.
A little too monotone, maybe.
Yeah, I think like his action stuff is fine, but I
Mhm.
think that when it's just him talking to someone, it's a little too dry. Except when he's talking to the snake performer and he's like posing as the committee for moral standards or whatever. That was fun. That was good. But like,
But do you
just
think?
his normal demeanor.
But do you think because you heard him so often during the movie that it got monotone?
Maybe that's why I
That's
want to rewatch the final cut. And I do, as I say in my review, it's very dependent on me watching the final cut. So I will have to watch the final cut.
okay.
And it may change the review slightly, but I think
Mhm.
he's a little dry. I kind of think everyone is on the dry side. Rachel, especially, I feel like is very
Oh.
just. But she's a replicant, so like
Mhm.
she's kind of just on that level. But I think that the single best performance of the movie is Rutger
villain.
Hauer as the
Yeah.
villain. He
Mhm.
is absolutely incredible. He is Roy Batty is the name of the character. He's menacing, but there is also the sequence in this movie that is his speech that he gives to Deckard before he dies.
Yeah. Oh,
That is
speech is great.
absolutely incredible.
Mhm.
It is truly one of the best film speeches ever. Who knows? Maybe I'll do a top 10 film speeches video at some point.
Monologues.
The villain monologue.
Mhm.
No, his is fantastic. And he is a great villain. And I think that,
Mhm.
he is the better part of the movie
Oh, yeah.
in terms of the cast.
No, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And he makes you feel like he's, I don't know, I don't want to say like a superhero villain. Like he takes bullets and he gets what he wants, but when he's fighting Harrison Ford and you see him getting hurt because he is almost retired, and
Well, he
some
is
more time-
retired and comes back.
Yeah, but doesn't he retire at the end, or he gets killed at the
Yeah,
end? Right?
Roy Batty?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, he dies.
Yeah. So, but you can see his arm is giving out, and that's why he put the nail in his arm. Is it? Am I not reading into that right?
Honestly, I'm going to have to rewatch it
Okay,
because
because
it's not coming to mind right now.
his right arm, when he punched through the wall, I guess gets injured somehow, and he has to put a stake through his palm to keep it like moving or something like that.
Wow.
No?
I honestly, it's not coming to mind. I just watched this 2 nights ago and it's not coming to mind.
Uh, Beyond that fact, yeah, he was a great villain. He felt very high up, but he could still get hurt at the same time, and that's what I like about him. Because about villains is they can get hurt a lot, but then still prove that they're all macho mighty. This one looked macho mighty, but still had fragments coming off of him.
Yeah.
If you catch my drift.
But he is also a sympathetic villain,
Mhm.
right? He's looking for, I mean, he does unsympathetic things to get what he wants, obviously, which makes him a villain. But like, what he's looking for and what the replicants are looking for is not a bad thing. It's what a machine like that would be looking for, given their condition, which does lead me into the, I guess the meaning that you could walk away with this movie. And I'm curious, like, obviously we've got a story, replicants come back to Earth, Deckard's got to get them and got to find them before they hurt anyone or whatever, right? But there was a deeper meaning and kind of deeper messaging that I walked away with, and I'm curious to know if you did as well.
No, I don't think so. You say it, and then maybe if I can reflect on it.
Sure. So as the movie was ending, what really stuck out to me is that replicants are almost completely human, right?
Yeah.
It's mostly just the labels that they're given, right? Replicant,
Okay.
slave, whatever. So, in a way, this movie is allegorical to race and social status. And in a way, you're seeing subjugated, kind of marginalized minorities, but this time through the lens of, you know, technological people instead of someone of a different race or a different gender or whatever it may be. Or like District 9 is also like that a lot too, dealing with kind of racism in apartheid South Africa, but with aliens. This is kind of the same thing, but like, you know, the replicants are basically slaves, and they come back seeking their freedom and their purpose.
Yeah.
And, you know, and if you think about it, like there is also the growth that can happen with people, right? Like, you know, Deckard starts off the movie being someone who used to kill replicants for a living, and then ends up falling in love with one.
Yep.
And so there is some deeper messaging there on social status, race. You know, you could. It's one of those things where it's open enough. It's not explicit enough that you walk away like, oh, that's definitely what it is.
Yeah.
Right. You're going to walk away with something different. If you're a part of the LGBTQ plus community, you could see that in Roy Batty, or you could see race in Roy Batty, or you could see religion in Roy. Like you could see any kind of human condition or part of our lives that we are marginalized for or against, right, in that struggle. And I think that is probably, besides the aesthetic of the movie, when I was done watching it, I really took a step back and was like, that was really cool. The way that it did it in a different kind of environment. Because I still think, like, I think that District 9 does it better. I will say that. But I think that this was kind of like a slightly different version of it with robot people instead of aliens. And so because of that, the difference and the aesthetic just kind of came together to make a movie that I walked away liking, but I think that I will really like more once I watch the final cut.
Yeah. And this is why we do these videos, because you explaining that to me every time you were making a suggestion of race and how they just want to be basically normal and live
Free
on
normal,
the planet and
have a
free.
life.
You totally get. I was like, yeah, that's basic. Yeah, that's what's going on in this movie. So,
and it may not be the point of the film. It might just be what I walked away kind of feeling about it. And that is what true art and good film should do, is have you walk away with something a little bit deeper than what it was trying to say.
Yeah, and like for me, I watched it and I said, hey, that's a good action movie with good cinematography and good shots and everything and like that. And you go, well, this is what I found interesting about it. And I go, you're right. That is interesting about it. And that's what's good about movies, because I took it as, wow, this is a good action movie. You took this as, wow, this really kind of hits.
Like, it is a good action movie,
yeah,
but there's also more to it. Like,
yeah,
there, you know, it's like John Wick, right? It's a great action movie, but there's a little bit more to it. You know, like, and it's so special when you can find something like that. But again, I'm just curious to watch the final cut to see if I think that it's going to be better than the theatrical one. Okay, Kevin, let's go ahead and start wrapping this up. This was your pick this week. So what are your final thoughts and your score?
My final thoughts of Blade Runner is, it is a damn good movie, damn good sci-fi action movie with Harrison Ford being as good as he is, because I like him. Great CGI for the time too. We didn't really talk about that, but there's worse CGI now than there was back then. And the cinematography, the way the movie is shot and how gritty it is absolutely amazing. If you like, I'm gonna say steampunk, but what is it?
Cyberpunk.
Thank you. Cyberpunk movies or sci-fi future movies, definitely watch this, because this kind of is an older movie that maybe laid way for the rest of these cyberpunk movies.
Well, there you go.
Oh,
what's your score?
I gave it an 80 out of 100. I forgot to say that.
All righty. An 80 out of 100 from Kevin. For me, I would say that this is kind of like the start or the kind of pinnacle of cyberpunk films. The aesthetic is fantastic. We also forgot to mention the music is incredible in this movie too. Absolutely fantastic.
Well,
but it also
when you don't mention the music, that means it's great because it just goes along with the story so much.
I mean, when you don't notice it in the moment, but like, you know, I've been listening to that soundtrack for like forever, and so like it's cool to finally see it in action. But also like it's got a deeper meaning to it, for me at least. And if you watch the movie, maybe you'll walk away with it too. But that made it really special for me. I do think the performances do lack a little bit, except for the main villain. And I think that, especially with the version I watched, the theatrical cut, the narration just didn't do a whole lot for me, and it kind of took me out of it. But I still think the movie is very good, and so I did give it an 81 out of 100, which equates to a 4 stars on Letterboxd. So the question now falls to you. What did you think of Blade Runner, or what do you think of it? Go ahead and leave those comments down in the comment section down below, and just remember to be nice to one each other, because one of you may be a replicant, and the other one may be a Blade Runner. But next week, we'll be covering the action thriller No Country for Old Men. Very excited to talk about that one, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. But again, thank you so much for watching. We have our live stream that goes live every Monday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, where we cover movie news, reviews, and so much more, and more fun stuff. We might be doing some more fun stuff in the future with it. You don't know. Might have to watch and find out. We also have this show that goes live every Friday at 4 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, so you have it in time for your morning commute, morning drive, morning walk, however you get to work or wherever you're going. You can have us right in time for it. But again, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, make sure to keep those eyes on the screen.